Well, let's start with The Hunter. This is a film starring Willem Dafoe, who plays a character which virtually comes across as a kind of contract hitman who is hired to track down the last Tasmanian tiger. There are stories that there are still Tasmanian tigers. Some people think this is completely mythological. He is contracted at the beginning of the film to go and get samples from apparently the last Tasmanian tiger. In his quest going out into the wilderness, he meets a single mother living with her kids whose husband, who was a sort of eco-warrior, has disappeared, and there is some suggestion that somehow her husband has disappeared in suspicious circumstances. Whilst he's out looking for this lost creature, he also comes up against resistance from the locals who think that he's an outsider coming in to do something devious and terrible. But more importantly, during his quest for the last Tasmanian tiger, he starts looking for something rather deeper, i.e. himself. Here's a clip.
Is that your father?
Which? Oh yeah, he did it.
Why is he scratching his head?
He's not. He's looking for something, but he'd never guess what for.
A way out of here?
A tiger.
Really, a tiger? What kind of tiger?
A Tasmanian tiger.
A Tasmanian tiger? That's very interesting, but you know they don't exist.
Just so?
They're extinct.
I know. My dad saw one last summer. It's a secret.
You must have told somebody about it. Somebody else besides you. Have other people seen it?
I don't know. Ask him.
The interesting thing about the film is I interviewed Willem Dafoe for The Culture. Remember he came on our show to talk about Antichrist, and he's very interesting.
Yes,
and he's great. He's really good fun. But he has this kind of he has a particular ability to play that sort of lonely, isolated, existential anti-hero, God's Lonely Man in the Paul Schrader films, man against just all alone out looking for his soul in the wilderness. And during the course of this film, what happens is that his search for the Tasmanian tiger becomes something much more profound. Interestingly, however, when we were talking about it, I said, well, if you asked me what the film was about, I'd say it was about somebody going off into the wilderness and looking into the void and seeing themselves looking back out of it. But the problem is, if I say that, nobody will go and see it. How would you describe it? And he said, I'd describe it as a fun action romp. And there's a lot of stuff in it in which, for example, in order to research the role, he learned how to do things. He learned lots of survivalist techniques. He learned about trapping. He learned about, cooking his own food. He learned about, basically how you would survive if you're out in the wilderness. In every frame of the film, he looks like he's completely convincing in that character, and you do believe that he is the character he is playing. I do think that there are also political overtones. It is a film to some extent about colonialisation. It is a film about what's happening to the great wilds. It is a film about big companies being corporately corrupt and this having an effect on the ground level. But actually, beyond that, it's a film like Le Samurai or any one of those existential loner films about a man facing the great bleak abyss and void and looking into it.
Which is the most fun of all those existential
the most fun of all of those
look
ones.
into the void type films.
Well, actually, this is surprisingly good fun for one of those movies, and because when you consider the one,
has anyone ever looked into the void and seen something quite fun and entertaining?
Well, there's that Nietzsche thing, isn't it? That he who looks long, when you look long into an abyss, the abyss also looks back into you, and he who fights monsters should take care to see to it that they do not in the process become monstrous. I always had the thought that if you were in a really bad mood, you'd look long into the abyss would look back into you and go, blimey, you look terrible today. But essentially,
why would anyone look into the abyss then anyway, on that basis?
Well, have you never looked into the abyss? Have you never woken up and faced the cosmic void?
Well, I retuned to
Don't make that joke.
by mistake once, and that was a huge catastrophe.
Okay, well, if I can get
and
this,
I suppose I did. That was a moment of.
If I can rescue this from the brink of Nietzschean flippancy, in the end,
excuse me, there isn't such a thing as Nietzschean flippancy.
No, the film looks really good. It kind of hangs on Willem Dafoe's performance because he's in pretty much every frame. He has one of those faces. I mean, the whole drama hangs off his face. Even when he's surrounded by this extraordinary landscape, the whole drama seems to be growing out of the cragginess of his face. He does have an absolutely magnetic screen presence, and it's a very, very good role for him. I think in the end, it's probably not going to be a huge hit because it's not a great big action adventure romp, which is why I think when he said that he was being funny, but I think it is an interesting film, and it is one of those films that the more you look at it, the more you can see in it.
I wonder if anyone could give us some examples of Nietzschean flippancy, if indeed such a thing does exist. Maybe people have, or
I'm sure Woody Allen could
share moments when they've stared into the void and maybe they've
have you really never looked into the abyss?
Well, but one doesn't. You're too busy. When do you have time? I bet Jonathan Overend's never looked into the abyss. What he does is he works hard and he looks up stats and he watches tennis. You
Okay.
know, life's too busy to look.
Well, it
into
may
the
well be
abyss.
in that case that if you watch this film, actually, if you watch
Although
The Hunter,
maybe
what
when you heard about Robin van Persie, maybe that was a
what
moment
you
of
will see
existential
is a
crisis.
film about a man learning how to, learning how to do survivalist techniques and tracking down a creature which everyone believes to be extinct. It may well be that that is how you would see it. In fact, that is how you would see it.
Okay.
I saw something else. The most important thing is we could both get something out of it.
Was it for you when you decided Elvis was dead?
That was a void moment, yeah.
Was it? Well,
Yeah.
there you go. I learnt about that on the news, but you learnt about it a few years later.